So you can go through those. Grab it. There's check marks by some of them that I already did. I think like 2 of them. So just look through them, and then we'll talk about that. Or I'll tell you about that.
I want to know the first time of doing coke.
Okay.
Because I'm comparing this to your first time doing weed after years of not doing.
Well, it was nothing like that. That was in 1988. My mom and dad separated for the last time. I was in Inglewood, staying there.
How old were you?
13. I was 13, and there was a lot of coke in the house. My grandmother was selling it. In one room, my grandmother sold coke. In the other room, my aunt sold weed. She might have been fucking around selling PCP too, I'm not sure, but I know she was selling weed because I would sell for my grandmother. My grandma would pay me. I'd go to my aunt and I would buy weed with the money my grandmother paid me. I'd give her some money, she'd give me an envelope with skunk weed, and then I'd go buy me some beer, some cigarettes, and I'd party out on the porch by myself. So one night I was there hanging out in the living room. My grandma was in her room with her husband. They were probably drinking and watching TV. They would do that. They would sit in the room, drink, watch TV, watch movies, and maybe do some coke and just hang out all night. So I'm sitting in the living room watching TV by myself, and my aunt was home too. My aunt was home, but she was in the room. Her husband was gone. She was in the room with her kids. Her friend came over. Her friend's name was Rosie. I have a story about fucking Rosie too. Rosie was her friend. Rosie was probably like 21 years old, 20 years old. And she showed up with some guy named Chris. Chris worked for my grandfather. He was a paisa dude, but he was probably like 21 years old too. But he was a really nice guy. And I'd see him every day because the yard that they worked at was there at my grandmother's house. So he was there every fucking day. So he was really cool. And him and her were fucking around together. So they show up together, and they had showed up because Chris and her wanted to buy coke for my grandmother. So I let them in, and we all said hello to each other. Chris went to the back, knocked on my grandma's door. She served him up. He comes back out, and they're sitting in the living room with me, and he's like, "What are you doing? What are you up to?" And I said, "Nothing, just here hanging out." And he says, "All right. Hey, do you want a drink?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "What do you want?" And at that time is when I can't remember if it was Bartles and James or California Coolers. It was one of them. I'm pretty sure those Bartles and James wine coolers were out, which is like the White Claws of that time. And he's like, "What do you drink?" I said, "Get some Bartles and James." He's like, "Cool. We'll be right back and go to the store. What do you want?" I said, "Give me the peach ones. The peach ones are good." All right. So they came.
Were you already drinking at that age?
Yeah, I was already drinking. I was drinking. I was already smoking weed. I was smoking cigarettes. But I hadn't done drugs.
So you just left it at
just weed and cigarettes and drinking.
Uh-huh.
And then they left. And they come back with 2 4-packs because they only sold those in 4-packs. They came back with 2 4-packs. Took them to the refrigerator. And he brings me one, and they all have one. So we're sitting there in the living room. We have the front door open. It's kind of chilly outside, but we're hanging out. And he tells Rosie, "Hey, let's go to the bathroom." So they go into the bathroom, and then They go into the bathroom, and I can see the bathroom. If I look to the right, I can see the bathroom right there. They go and they close the door. I already know what they're going in there for. I already seen so many people come to my grandma's house and do that, so I already knew what they were doing. So then, I wasn't interested in that. I didn't really know too much about it, so I just knew that they were going to do coke in the bathroom. And I was just hanging out drinking. Then the door opens up, and he's like, "Hey, Mike, come here." And so I get up and I go to the bathroom, and he closes the door behind me. He's like, "You want some?" And on the counter there was 3 big fucking lines, 3 of them, big ones. And he had the bill rolled up right there in his hand. "You want one?" And I had never done it before. I had seen people do it because they were always doing it there. So I seen people do it. They were always doing it in the kitchen counter. I would see it all the time, but I had never done it. So, but without hesitating, I was like, yeah, like I wanted to make it seem like I knew what the fuck I was doing. So I was like, yeah. So I think that one of them did their line before me, and I just watched them do it. They snorted half the line, and then they snorted the other half on the other nostril. So I said, okay. So they gave it to me, and I did the same thing, like real quick, boom, boom. Then the other person did it, and then we went back into there, like, let's go in the living room. Go in the living room. And I just remember sitting there thinking, like, that, I think that at that moment is when I felt like I was an adult, because I was, like I said, I was 13. These people were like 21 years old. I felt like an adult. Like I felt like, oh, they accept me. Like I'm with them. They're giving me drugs. Like they invited me in here. So, you know, we were doing lines all night, and I liked the way it didn't. To me, it didn't get me really high. It just kept me up all night. I don't know how it feels to other people. When I was doing cocaine, it just kept me up. I didn't feel like sketched out and tweaked out, all zinged out, nothing. I just I couldn't sleep. And I would drink all night and I wouldn't get all fucked up. And that's when it started for me. That's when it started for me doing the coke. And since it was there in the house, I can get whenever I want it. I can go in my grandma's drawer, take a 20 out. She wouldn't notice it was gone because there was a bunch of it in there. Go grab a 20 out of there, or when I was selling it to her, I would just use my own money. I use my own $20, put it in the pile of money, take one out for myself, give it to her, and not have my own shit. I didn't have to buy it that often though. Most of the time, just go in the drawer and get it. And then everybody that was there had it. So
they would give you some.
It was giving it. They were giving it to me. It was just giving the shit to me. You know what I mean? It was like at that house, my cousin's house, my uncle's house. Didn't matter where I went, there was somebody there with a big ass sack because they were all getting it from her. And so we would party. And for like 2 years, that's what we would do on the weekends. I'd go to my uncle's house in Lawndale. This girl would take off for the weekend, go to Fresno to visit my family, and we'd have the house to ourselves. So me, him, his friends, a couple of my friends would be there the whole weekend. We wouldn't sleep for 2 days straight. We'd be there the whole week. He'd be barbecuing all day. Starting in the afternoon, we'd be barbecuing at night. Drinking outside, in the front yard. Drinking, barbecuing, watching movies, and doing cocaine. I'm surprised that I never got addicted to the shit. But, you know, that's the first time that I ever did it. And I liked doing it, but I wasn't really too much into buying it. I always felt that if I was buying it, then I was a drug addict. So I really didn't buy it. I would get it for free.
Yeah.
It was good, you know, but then I started getting into other shit, you know, smoking PCP and sometimes smoking crack, sometimes smoking meth. But all these things I was doing was not the PCP. PCP was probably the only drug that I was really out there buying. The crack, I get that shit when somebody else had it. The acid, when somebody had it, I'd take it. You know, cocaine, somebody had it because cocaine is like one of the only drugs really that people will just constantly give away. And they were giving it away like a motherfucker. Even though it was expensive, it made you look like you were the man. If you had cocaine, you're just giving the shit away to all your friends.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the first time that I had it. Cocaine was in my grandmother's bathroom when I was 13 with fucking Chris and Rosie. And like I said, it just made me feel like somebody. Made me feel like I was just older. And those, I guess that's the time where I started to be more mature and act older. Don't act like a kid. I can't act like a kid. I'm gonna act like a kid if I'm over here hanging out with you guys. I'm doing cocaine. How do I act like a kid now? You know what I mean? I can't be running around playing hide and go seek with my friends on the block no more. I can't be riding bikes with my friends no more. I have to be more mature. I have to be hanging out with you guys now, and drinking with you guys now, and going through things that you guys are doing, not the kid shit anymore. Like,
is that when you feel like it shifted? There was a shift in your.
That's when I think it stopped. Because I had friends that lived across the street. My friend Mario lived across the street. His dad owned LAX Tacos. At the time, it was a lunch truck. And then he moved into a building, into a brick and mortar. And then next door to him was George. Down the street was Alan. I had fucking friends on that street. We used to all ride bikes together. We stayed up all night playing Ding Dong Ditch, hide and go seek on bikes. We'd use all these different streets and we'd play and shit with each other. We'd chase each other around. And we would just ride our bikes all over the place. And I think that was when everything stopped. Now I seen I had to start acting older. I can't be. I wanted them to accept me. I wanted to be around the older people, so I knew that I could not be out riding bikes, playing hide and go seek in the front yard, playing baseball on the street no more. I couldn't be doing that shit no more if I wanted to hang out with the big guys, my uncle, because that's around the time my uncle finally started letting me hang out with him. He never let me hang out with him before. He always tell me like, nah, get out of here, you're too little. And I say, oh, come on, thought to let me go hang out with you guys, man. Like, nah, get out of here. And it'd be him, Rick Guzman, my cousin Gilbert, this dude named Droopy from Inglewood. It was quite a few guys that would be over there, and they're all the same age, and they'd all be hanging out together. And then they get in my uncle's truck, and I tell them, hey, can I go with you guys? Like, nah, man, go on, go play with your friends. You're too little. And I say, ah, fuck, whatever, you know. So then I go look for my friends across the street and hang out with them. And then once that shit happened, I was like, oh, in my mind, it's like I gotta change how I'm acting. Like, you know, like I have to act more mature. If I act more mature, then they're gonna accept me. And they finally did. My uncle finally one day did. I remember I was in the front yard just sitting on the porch, and him, my cousin, and Rick Guzman came out of the house. And then I go, where are you going? And he said, oh, we're gonna go down to Rally Burgers right there on Century and Inglewood Avenue. And I think he had said, like, you want me to give you something? And I was like, yeah, give me something from there. And then when he got close to the car, he had turned around, he's like, you want to go? And I was like, hell yeah. So he's like, come on, get in the truck. And from that day on, I was with him all the time. From that day on, I knew what they were doing. They were stealing cars. They were tagging cars, all of them. So I started learning that shit from them and hanging out with them. I would just go with them to scope out cars because back then it was easy to tag cars. They had a hook up at the DMV, they could tag the cars, and they were taking orders from people. Somebody like, hey, I need a fucking a Mustang 5.0 convertible or a fucking IROC, whatever it was they needed. Even if it was old cars. I remember one time when we went and took a convertible, like I think it was like a 54 or 53 Chevy out of some guy's garage in Redondo Beach. He lives on a hill. They will scope the car out. Somebody would say, okay, hey, I need this car. It's at this address. Give me that car and I'll pay you so much money for it. So like, they go, okay. So then they would go at night and they'd park in front of that house or down the street. And they'd watch the house for a couple of nights, waiting to see how that person was coming home in and out. I would go with them, sit there and watch with them. And then when it was time to go, sometimes I would drive one of their cars. We go, I would get in the driver's seat and wait down the street from where they were at. They would walk over to the house with their fucking tools, go get the car, drive past me, I would take off and follow them, and we'd go back to the house. Then they would sell the car off. They never paid me shit. But I would go with them. I mean, I didn't care if they paid me. I just wanted to hang out with them. So one thing led to another. One thing led to another over there in Inglewood.
But that was how you started cocaine.
That's how I started doing cocaine. But I was never addicted to cocaine.
So these memes that you always have on social media that everyone loves.
I don't do cocaine. I used to do cocaine, but I don't do cocaine.
Right.
But
did your family know that you were doing cocaine? Did
my
your
grandmother
grandma?
She knew I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
They all knew I was doing it. You know, like I said, my aunt knew I was smoking weed because I was buying the weed from her.
Mm-hmm.
Then next thing you know, it's like I'm doing cocaine in the house. Like it was no big deal, and I can't. And now I look at it like, fuck, man. Like if I had a 13-year-old grandson come in here and just fucking break down some fucking lines right here,
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, are you stupid or what?
Mm-hmm.
But at that house, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
I come in the fucking kitchen, drop the shit, fucking break it. I have a fucking razor blade, just break that shit up, do my shit, and I'm gone. Nobody would say anything. Nobody would, what are you doing? Nobody would say nothing. It was normal for me to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was normal for me to be high. It was normal for me to be drunk. I used to carry around a bottle of peppermint schnapps in my back pocket because my grandfather used to do that shit. He used to carry around a bottle of peppermint schnapps in his back pocket. And I liked it. He gave me some one time. I liked it. So I started buying small bottles of peppermint schnapps, and I would put in my back pocket, and I'd be just walking around, hanging out with my friends or whatever, going to my neighborhood. I reached my pocket, I got my fucking alcohol, started drinking my beer, or keeping my grandma's freezer because it wouldn't freeze. And it's even better when you put it in the freezer. It doesn't freeze. Leave it in there for an hour. It's already has that peppermint taste to it, but when you drink it when it's super cold, it's like really good.
Yeah.
So I would just go in the refrigerator, take a good pound of that shit, put it back in there, and just go in the front room and start drinking fucking beers. We were drinking Budweiser at the time, so just drinking beers on the couch. I mean, I'm a kid sitting in my grandmother's living room. There's fucking adults coming in and out of the house. You know what I mean?
So you were sitting at the big table.
Pretty much. I was with the fucking adults now.
Yeah.
I wasn't over here with the kids no more. You know what I mean? And I started treating the kids like they weren't shit. Like all my cousins and you know my cousins' kids that would come over. It's like, oh, these guys are fucking kids. You know what I mean? They were like, hey Michael, let's go play. Let's go outside. Let's go play hide and go seek. Like, nah, get the fuck out of here, man. What are you talking about? Like, I can't do that. That's in my mind. I can't do that shit. Like, get out there, the fuck out of here.
It's weird, like most people don't really remember when they stopped being a kid and started being an adult, but you do.
I didn't either. I seen that meme thing where it says when
about the bikes and the kids.
One day you don't realize that there was a day that came that was the last day that you went outside and played with your friends. Well, what I'm thinking about was what was going on then. I knew it was then. That's when I stopped doing that shit. I couldn't do it no more. That's when all that shit was going on where I was selling dope, doing dope, you know, drinking, smoking, running the streets all fucking night long. You know, I'm 13 years old. I'm on Inglewood Avenue over in Lenox, buying weed off from guys at the fucking phone booth. I just walked down Inglewood Avenue because I lived on Inglewood Avenue in Arvida. It's only like 5 blocks before you hit Century. Once you hit Century, that's Lenox. Cross into Lenox, that's where the little liquor store was at over there. About 2 blocks in, all the guys would be standing out there. I would go right there. 1 in the morning, I'm out there, 13-year-old kid, just walking around, and they knew who I was. All them guys out there in Lenox knew who I was, and that I was from a different neighborhood, but my neighborhood got along with theirs. So they would sell me weed, walk back to my grandma's house, and I don't know. That's when everything was. That's when everything started to really fucking change. It didn't just change when they got divorced. When my father got divorced, it changed there in Inglewood when I started to get more and more involved in shit. You know what I mean? And then there was just so much other shit that I started getting involved in. You know, I started watching people. That's when crack became real popular. And I would see people smoking crack. I wasn't trying it then, but I just see people smoking crack in the house. It was just like you can go in the kitchen, the motherfuckers in there. I remember watching my uncles making crack in the microwave. And I was just like, what the fuck? Because I knew you could do it on the stove. they were doing the shit in the microwave. And I was just like, fuck, I was just sitting there just fascinated by what these guys were doing. But again, it's a different story when it's an adult. But I was a little kid watching all the adults, and none of the adults were like, get out of here. Hey, get Michael out of here. He shouldn't be in here. It's like, he's okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's not saying nothing. Let him watch. Then it was like nobody said nothing.
Right.
Nobody said nothing, and that was because when you look at it now, it's like, man, I would be fucking pissed off if my family was letting my kid do that shit at 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure you would too if you knew that they were doing that shit with Keegan, letting him fucking smoke dope in the house and shit, and like, yeah, so.
Yeah, because we talked to Keegan about not smoking weed and not drinking alcohol, and I can't even imagine, because you're a pretty strict person now, as an adult with kids, you know.
I think that I'm as strict as my father. No, I'm not as strict as my father was. But I'm pretty close to it. I'm pretty fucking close to being like that, you know. Yeah, I am strict. I think it's good to be that way. I think what fucked up was, not for me necessarily, but for a lot of people. In the 80s, it was in the 80s when they took their fucking parents' rights away from hitting their kids. That fucked everything up. And that was the white people that did this shit. They always felt that the black community and the Latino community would abuse their kids and beat their kids and all this other shit. So they took that right away from them and started telling the kids that they can call the cops on their parents. That was in the 80s. And once they did that shit, you look at these fucking kids they have now, that's the result of it. The way they act, you see it on Instagram, running amok in fucking in malls and McDonald's, doing all the shit that they're doing. That's the result of that shit. Because it's still almost the same thing. You know, if you hit your kid, the kid can call the cops on you, and you might not get in trouble, but you're gonna go through all kinds of fucking hurdles. When I was a kid, it wasn't like that. When I was a kid, if my dad whooped my mom's ass and the cops came, it was like, hey, get the fuck out of here. You're drunk, get the fuck out of here. Come back tomorrow. He whooped our ass, it was like, get out of here. Come back tomorrow when you're sober.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, get the hell out of the house. Now you hit your kids, you might go to jail. And these kids know that. And that started in the fucking 80s. And so, them 80s kids grew up not getting their asses whooped anymore. Then they raised their kids and didn't fucking whoop their ass in the fucking 90s and all that shit. Now we have these kids over here. They're the worst fucking kids there has ever been. They're fucking terrible.
So maybe another video we'll have is that we'll tell the story of when you smoked weed after years of not.
That was terrible. I wouldn't do that shit again.
And you never did.
Not like that. So, yeah, that's the story of the first time I did cocaine.
In your grandma's bathroom.
My grandma's bathroom on 93rd, and you knew what happened on the sink with Rosie and Chris.
At the age of 13.
13 years old. I had fun doing it though.